So this is a Section B question from the December 2022 AFM exam. This question is looking at business valuations, and we're going to do a short overview of some of the challenges and some of the good habits to get into in answering this type of question. So in general, I always find it useful to look at the requirements first, because if you don't, then what you're going to do is click onto Exhibit 1 and you'll be reading through all of that text without knowing what you're looking for. It's much better to have an awareness that this is a 25 mark question where the biggest requirement is on estimating the equity value of two companies coming together and then estimating the benefits that would be gained from Propleis, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, if they go for this acquisition. So once I know that and I can see two short discussion requirements afterwards, then I can throw myself in to looking at Exhibit 1. There are no numbers in Exhibit 1, so it's not really relating to that big requirement. So I'll give that a quick read through, mainly picking up that first paragraph that were two publishing businesses coming together, and then focus on the numbers and get an idea of what I'm meant to be doing with them. So this is an overview. We're not going to work these numbers, but let's just have a look at what we're meant to do. We need to come up with a post-acquisition valuation of the equity. So we're given what the company is worth now. Propleis is making the acquisition. We're told that the company that you're buying want a 20% return, 20% premium, and that we also want a gain of at least 20% relative to the current equity value of our shares. So to work out a post-acquisition value with cash flows, we're just going to be discounting these cash flows given as dashes at an assumed cost of capital of 10%. So let's just have a quick look. We've got revenue growing at a certain rate. We've got operating cash flows given as a percent of sales revenue. So we can imagine that we're going to have post-tax operating cash flows fairly quickly. We've got some investments. And then after year 4, we've got cash flows forever. So from time period 5 onwards, we've got an annuity, and we discount an annuity by multiplying the cash flow by 1 over at the cost of capital of R minus the growth rate, which is given in the question. And that's going to give me a value at time 4, looking ahead to time 5 as the first annuity. And then I'm going to discount it back using a standard 10% discount factor at time 4. So that's the sense of direction there. And when I complete those calculations, I have the post-acquisition value of operating cash flows. Operating cash flows are before interest. So this doesn't give me the value of equity. It gives me the value of debt and equity. And then to get the equity valuation, I need to take off the amount of debt, which I'm going to assume is given by that final line, 1 of debt to 3 of equity. So 25% of the total value will be debt, 75% will be equity. And whatever the number that gives, that's the post-acquisition value. We can then take off the 20% premium on 340 million, and what's left belongs to our shareholders. And we can then say, right, what's that compared to our current value of 620? Does it give us the 20% return that we're looking for? And that's the sense of direction in that biggest requirement. So just a quick look at part B, where we have to discuss some assumptions. Now, the constant comment from the examiners is that when people are asked to discuss assumptions, they just list them. So what you must not do here is just list the assumptions. There is no point saying sales growth of 8% from year 2 to year 4 is an assumption, um, because it's not adding any value. What you could say is sales growth from year 2 to year 4 of 8% may be difficult in the years following an acquisition because integration might take time. The sales uplift may not happen that quickly, just something like that. So don't just list the assumption, also explore it. Another assumption is that the cost of capital is 10%. Well, it might not be, but what you could say is if it turned out to be higher than 10%, then the valuation would fall. So simply taking the assumption and saying something about it is going to pick up the credit. You don't have to say anything very clever, but you don't just list the assumptions. And don't forget that part B is a two-part question. Are the synergies likely to be achieved? A really good approach here, have a heading for synergies that are likely to be achieved and another heading for synergies that you don't think are going to be achieved. So it might be easy to have admin savings and paper savings. It might be harder to have cross-selling opportunities because of the different nature of the businesses, that type of thing. And part C is a short requirement, integration and synergies being realized. Well, this is going to require a plan, an inspection of key risk factors like losing key personnel and IT systems. Any relevant practical point will pick up a mark, and if you talk about it and add quite a lot of value, it could pick up 2 marks. So you might be looking for 3 actions in part C. Important looking at the question as a whole to answer the whole question. So part B and part C are split into different parts and not to get too bogged down in the numbers. And that completes this short overview.